I do have 5:45. It looks like we've got definitely have a quorum with us. Any others that want to come on in, you're welcome to come on in the courthouse. Find your seat if you will, welcome to. We will, call tonight's meeting to order. We were on some finish up items, tonight for our agenda. You received an email and you should have a piece of paper laying on your desk, today, for one of the questions that was asked, which was and actually, I think we received this email a bit ago, which was the fund balance. Some of those grants that we were trying to pull out of those fund balances and where those were, grant totalings, of 1.9 million were found within this budget. Grant revenues on that, so there's a difference, a county pay on that of roughly 350,000. You can see there, I'm doing some quick math, but roughly on the grants that our match side, the county's match side's around 350. I can get it real close if you want me to, but it's gonna be in that range. 332 right there. 330, there we go. Thank you, sir. 328,992. 328,000 county match, 328,992, I think is what you did. There we go. So that finds, hopefully has found quite a bit of the grant funds that we were talking about inside there, where you see them in the revenues, you see them in the, they show up, but they're washes in a way. In and out grant money. Are there any other questions on that portion of the original budget that we have in front of us? Is everybody good there with that one, with that information you received? Everybody have this in there? I thought so. I'm looking at the grant money one, the grant listings for FY 25 that we were, yes, sir. It says grant listings. They were new paper there today. That's what we were just discussing. You'll see in money revenue coming in from grants, $1,593,138. You'll see expenses going out to cover those grants, $1,922,130. A difference of $328,992 for the county's match on those. Is everybody clear with where those are? That was one of our questions that we had lingering, of where some of the fund balance changes were at and how much grant money was setting inside the FY 22 or 25 budget. You can also see where some of those are straight in, straight out, and which ones have local match cost. I believe the health department was funded, that's probably the most, it was funded in 2 years ago now. The 23 budget, I believe, is when the health department budget was put together for the addition. Playground still sitting around, has a large county match. I think that was a 50-50, if I remember that correctly. Which we hope to have a park open very soon. I know, it's been a rainy spring. We have to understand that. Are there any questions on the General Fund 101 grants that are inside that? So when you look at the other piece of paper you have today, no matter which one you're looking at, the fund balance with or without, you can see where that 1.4 million is the fund balance sitting in the 101. Not the, when we looked the other day, the 4 point something that was sitting there, which had $2 million worth of grant money in it. Any discussion at this point? All right, if we're all good with the grant side of things and we're comfortable with where we found that amount of money. Appreciate Miss Amy's time bringing out those grants and what was sitting inside the 101 for this FY 22 budget. Next one up is the other question that was asked and has been brought up a time or two. Here's some numbers to look at. What fund balances would look like with and without the cost of living raise, that COLA raise you see. Top line item is without, so staying at current pay rates, minus any pays that are moving steps. If I said that, I believe correctly, the pieces, did any department head, any individuals inside a department move steps? Those would still be happening, just each step is not increasing 2.5%. So that's why it looks a little different right here. So you see your line items at the bottom, your fund balances of each of those at the end. Remember, these are the 2.5% portion most of the way through of everything. I think that was the other information we had asked for. All right, you see in front of you those pieces of information. Any discussion where we are at this point on this piece that's been brought to us in terms of cost of living? I believe as I ask on this does not include elected officials inside that discussion. Yeah.
So if I understand this correctly, 2.5% raise across the board equals $124,402.
That's what's been stated here.
Okay.
All I can speak on in this case is, in the past, we did a 2.5% that cost us a little over 230,000 total because we ended up moving it to a 2.5%. A little over, that was in 2019. We went to, instead of doing the 2.5%, I fought hard to go to a 50-cent raise across the board, because it benefited every individual that was less than $20. And at that time, that was the majority of our staff. And that one, if memory serves me correctly, was just a little over 230,000. So if you look at your top, the top set is without. So 101 fund balance ending at $1,480,471. With fund balance is $73,000 less than that at $1,406,751. And those are with current adjustments to the budget as we've gone through them.
Okay, so on our paper, it has the actual 22-23 fund balance as of June 30th is 4,007,799,
You're referencing page number, will you
I'm sorry, page 39,
say one more time?
39.
Page 39 of your, packet?
Which is just the 101.
Right. I think this would, what was that number we've gotten it down to, you said?
I'm looking at 22-23 actual fund balance as of June 30th
Mm-hmm.
versus what June 30th, 2025 will be.
June 30th, 2025 of the 101 would be 1,406,000.
So,
Let's don't forget there are a little over,
the grants are in this
that's
number as well.
correct.
Okay,
There's a little over 1 point, yeah. Does that help? That ARPA, that helps out a little bit. Okay. It might not have been the same number of grant money in that one. Does that help a bit? Somewhere in the neighborhood of, it's a bit difficult to track all of those grants along the way. Maybe it would be important for us to continue to keep a better record, and maybe that's something we can think, so we can keep up with what grant monies are in what budget, and then really see how that's great. Any other discussions on this part where we are now? I know it's a lot of numbers to look at and go through right now, so I understand taking a few minutes here to look through these. I did ask Miss Amy here, and she's going to check back through these a little bit the next couple of days. We've kind of been in a rush to get these with the 2.5% without numbers together because everything's been proposed the other way. And I'll try to look back through my emails. I apologize for not today. Last year or the year prior, we had I believe it was last year, we had a 2.5%, a nothing, and a 5% in our budget numbers to look at last year. So I believe we can go there and get a number as well, just to check our numbers. Sometimes, we've all done those pieces, to make sure everything's right, just checking those pieces. With that stated, as we have our budget that we've gone through right now currently, and as stated earlier, this meeting was not to get this on this May agenda. We are fine with our rollout. The committee has time, so it doesn't have to finalize it, but it would be nice to start. If there's anything else you want, what do we want? What do we want to look at? I think we've brought all of those pieces to the table at this time. Are there any places that you wish to look, any areas you wish to look in? Mr. Cobb.
I'd like to go back and look at the animal shelter, budget.
Okay,
Um,
let me. That's page 31 of your packet. We're on page 31, which we had finalized at $68,353 at the first reading of.
so some conversations that I've had over the weekend, some concerns that were brought to my attention. And I think Ms. Trout is here to help speak on it if the committee would allow her to speak, but just kind of briefly, the part-time attendants, we cut those down to 0. And, the two main concerns were the part-time attendants and then the food budget. It's in here somewhere.
I don't believe we cut the food budget.
Might have been something else. I'm wrong on that, I guess, then.
There was some question over the food budget concerning, was it?
And she might can elaborate
Okay.
on that, but after looking at this paper in front of me, what I do see that was brought to my attention was the part-time attendance. There was, kind of a more in-depth discussion as to the jobs and the, duties that these part-time attendants are responsible for on a day-to-day basis. And if it's the will of the committee to let Ms. Trout kind of go into more detail since it is her department, I think I asked her to come here, if that was okay for the committee to hear her out for a second.
Is that anyone in the committee? Everyone okay with that? I'll allow, certainly.
So I think a lot of the confusion of the part-time employees is just what they do. I mean, I think everybody thinks that at the shelter, we just have people to feed and clean, and that's not at all. I mean, that's about 10% of what everybody does. Part-time employees also spend in-depth time in trying to get these dogs enrichment. You can kind of think of a zoo animal in a cage. It's not fair to leave these animals inside a kennel all day. So, they're doing some enrichment. I've got a couple of pages worth of duties that they do, a list of things, but kind of in a nutshell. They are to, maintain the health of the animal. They are to maintain, not necessarily maintain, but bring to light if there's anything that's going on. All of the day-to-day things.
Sorry.
Sorry. All of the day-to-day things that they do, make sure that these animals are healthy enough to go into a home. And I don't mean just physically, I mean mentally. These animals, they come off of the street, so to say. Most of the animals that come into the shelter, about I'd say about 89% of these animals that come into the shelter are stray animals. And even though, you know, we think of them as our family pets and just dogs, they do have to have physical and mental stimulation. They also, you know, make sure that these animals are clean and vaccinated and medication and going back and forth to the doctor. And, you know, yes, our part-time employees have up to 29 hours a week. But that doesn't mean that's the only time that they are there. We do, you know, after hour, we do on the weekends, we do events. And those hours are volunteer. And running the shelter, you know, as a singular person is not as feasible as it sounds. I know Ms. Overman has been to the shelter, and I don't believe that the majority of you have been there. It's a 1,000 square foot building. I understand that it sounds small, but once the dogs are taken care of, we spend a lot of time trying to find them homes, trying to make sure that they are fully and available and capable, mentally available to go into a home, and that takes a lot of time. So, you know, we also have people that stop by to get food, free food. I know we spoke about that a little bit. We have people that are coming in to get vaccinations. At one time, a company donated some vaccines, and so they're there to help that as well. Do you have a question?
Are coming in to donate food or get, you said the word get food, free food?
They're from our donation. So our food pantry, we have a food pantry that we give to the community. Yes.
Miss Trout, kind of going back to the part-time attendants, if I understood you correctly, they work 29 hours. Is that right? The part-time attendants?
In the summer months, we work 29. In the winter, the colder months, we go back down to 20.
Okay,
Mhm.
so they're not set on a 29-hour
No,
schedule all year long.
right. In the
If
summer.
if it slows down,
That's right.
their hours reflect that.
That's right.
In the summertime, it's warm outside, it's nice outside, people want their dogs to go to the creeks and lakes and stuff. Business kind of picks up, so they're
Yes.
needed more.
That's right.
Okay, so they're not set on a 29-hour
Absolutely
schedule. Okay,
Mm-mm.
So two individuals work 29 hours each week.
Yes,
So for a total of 58 hours
Yes.
for them and 40 hours for yourself.
that's correct.
For how many dogs?
We've had 109 dogs.
How many dogs do you have in the shelter currently?
We have about 12 dogs in the shelter.
Today, you have 12 dogs in the shelter.
We have a total of 41, but yes, 12.
In the shelter, how many dogs do you have today?
Yes, 12.
You have 12.
Mhm.
When did you gain the last three? You had 9, I believe, last week, is what I checked on.
That could be just my misspoken. We have about 12.
About 12.
Yes, I don't know these numbers off the top of my head. I believe there's about 12. Yeah, 12.
That's 98 hours a week to take care of 12 dogs.
We're not just there to take care of these dogs on a clean and feed basis. We spend a lot of time trying to give enrichment to these dogs, finding them homes, making sure that they're able to go into a home. We're facilitating, volunteers that come in. We had people come out and volunteer to put AstroTurf in our play yard. So, we have to have extra people. We constantly have people coming in, looking at dogs to adopt them. And so someone has to be there to do that, not just myself.
Understood. I appreciate your explanation there. Mr. Cothran, is there more that you wanted to get out of that?
no, I think I kind of have a pretty good understanding. My request, I know there's been a motion made and seconded. I would ask, to go back and look at the part-time attendance. And at least one, I would like to see both of those put back in there. But that's my request. I don't know, you said the process of rescinding that motion and redoing all that, but that would be my request.
Can I ask a question?
You may.
Is there a problem with the food budget? Because the budget that were presented, it has $3,000 for animal food and supplies. Are you not happy with that?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I thought it was reduced to 250. So that's my mistake.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's 3,000 and we didn't change that last week.
What was reduced was the ACAT, which was training, was reduced from 2,500 to 250. The discussion on food was, would that be enough? I've seen a monthly total that was close to that number. I don't see how $3,000 gets us there on the monthly totals I've seen. I think your statement was 750 a month right now. Do we purchase the food for foster animals? You said there's 41, so the county is taking care of the foster animals?
These animals are in the shelter, so yes, they take care of those foster animals.
Are there any donations that would come into to the animal shelter that would help alleviate that cost?
So my future recommendation would be that we would supply a smaller bag and ask our fosters if they would cover the rest. So I do have a plan to try to reduce that cost.
I would just like to say that my thought when we reduced the part-time staff was that you had volunteers. And across the board, when we're going through this budget, we have been, super conservative in my opinion. And so that was my only thought with this was to be conservative. And I was hoping that you would be able to utilize your volunteers to save taxpayer dollars. That was my only thought.
Those volunteers don't work at that capacity. None of those are in the shelter volunteers. I have one that goes and takes our spay neuter dogs to the clinic in Sumner County in Lebanon. And then I have one that helps us with social media and PR. And then I have another one who helps us with applications. So they don't come into the shelter.
In looking back, it appears that that motion was made in following parliamentary procedures would be, Mr. Gregory, I believe you made the motion. Mr. Cawthorn, I believe you were the second to that motion for the 68,353. I will, would allow the discussion to continue if you wish to withdraw your motions. I do encourage us to understand that this is not about a lack of care for those animals. This is about the numbers game, and the numbers are alarming at this time. And we've tried to be very conservative through this budget to take care of taxpayer dollars. I certainly love my dogs, and take well care of them. I understand there's a heart here for them. Don't hear what I'm not saying. I think there may be some options that, we can look at. I'm certainly willing to consider looking at where we are, but 98 hours, this is not towards dogs, but 98 hours of paid time per week for eight to 12 animals is very alarming to me. I wish we had that kind of numbers in the school. I'll just be straight up with you. 3 individuals to 12 animals, that's 1 to 4. We're nowhere close. We're 1 to 30 or 1 to 27 in most of our schools. So I'm just being honest with where numbers are.
The motion was made and seconded. I'm about like her. I thought the volunteers would be enough to help since it was several volunteers. And I also in that motion said if she sees that the volunteers is not gonna work, she can come back in front of us later on with a budget, a budget amendment to try to get that. I mean, I think that was the,
That was exactly
motion made.
the motion.
Can you get by with one part-time?
I can definitely try.
What does the work towards the 5013C look like?
I think at this time that that entity needs to be taken off of the table because I don't know how long that's gonna take. Like I said, I presented this to the IRS in December, and I don't know where it stands right now. I keep asking for updates, and it is, I think, unrealistic to try to have all of our eggs in that basket right now. Until I know where that goes, I can't rely on that nonprofit.
The only reason we say that is this department was brought under with the intent of it moving to a 5013C within a short period of time. And that was literally the approach to this program. Mr. Ford.
Down here next to the bottom, it says we'll be using 10,000 from reserve, 4 kilos budget amendment to be done.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Is there money left over in the budget?
Line item 790 is what he's asking on. It says there's no money there, but it says we will be using 10,000 from reserve. So I believe that means you're gonna do a $10,000 request for a budget amendment for 4 kennels. $2,500 per kennel, I assume.
At this time, I'm going to not do that and use that money towards the repair of our roof. And that would be a budget amendment in the future.
Around $12,000 is available in reserves for this department.
That's what I thought it was, but I wasn't sure.
On a monthly average, how many dogs is actually at the pound?
Right now, we stay full, so I'd imagine about 12. The shelter takes in every stray animal that is brought to the shelter. The sheriff's department brings us stray dogs all the time. Their number one call at the sheriff's department is animal related. We're constantly getting calls to owner surrenders. So, we constantly have the need. And even though 1 or 2 may go out, it is always replaced.
So you're averaging 12 dogs a day, monthly, 12 daily.
On average, yes. I've had more than that in the shelter before, but on average 12.
How many are adopted out on a month-to-month basis?
In the summer months, those numbers are higher. I think about roughly 6 to 12 dogs, roughly, probably lower than that.
Per month?
Probably an average about 10 a month, if
And-
that.
And there's a fee that's attached to that adoption process. And that fee goes into your budget, your fund balance. And that fund balance can be earmarked by the animal shelter to cover vet costs, to help cover food cost or something like that.
Sure, I would imagine that can be used for that, yes.
Line item 335. She's got, I lost my place. She got 1,500 in there on repair of the building. Maybe she could use that in the other space, which wouldn't raise her budget any.
In which space are you mentioning? But remembering here, we are not in an open. We are not in an open, on this discussion. We have not withdrawn, so we, anything at this time. We can discuss them, but we can't make changes or movements inside this at this point.
How, do you do a time, are you on a 8-hour day? What's your schedule? I mean, do you clock in and out, or, I mean, what's your schedule?
Yes, I'm 8-hour day, 8 to 5 every day, Monday through Friday, yes. And we would like to be open on Saturday, but we can't because of staff.
As we look at what we've got in front of us in discussion, I understand there are pieces at play here that are tougher than we want to look at. I think that we can. I struggle to understand the number needed for the number of animals. And that piece, I'm being honest with you, it's running a budget and we're running the people's money here. I love the animals as they are, but 4 to 1, on 98 hours, a week is a large, number in my view there in this case. I'll stand by that statement on this part. I care not what the committee wants to go and do. I'll take, and as I said, your recommendations, and we'll certainly send them on. It's not against a department or a place. It's against spending the county's, it's being wise with our county's money. I do want to come back to one question a bit, and who is in charge of pushing the 501(c)(3)?
That would be me.
Thank you.
I was asked to create it. I was asked to run it. I was asked to do everything with a 501(c)(3). And I'm not saying that it won't go in that direction, because obviously that was the whole point of creating it. But at the moment, I'm just kind of at the mercy of the IRS to finalize all of that.
When you were asked to do those things, you were under the understanding when you took this job, that was the goal of it?
To my recollection, yes.
Thank you.
What's the other members considering? I mean, I can rescind my motion to give her one part-time help. I don't mind doing that, but I don't want to get the opinion of the other committee members for her. We can leave the motion as it stands, the original.
My opinion is we leave it the way it is and we see what happens moving forward with volunteers. And I'm sorry. I love animals as well. I just think this is the right thing to do. I think you have to push the 501(c)(3) through. I personally have experience with the 501(c)(3) setting that up back in 2010. I know that was several years ago, but it took less than a month to get it done. I think this is where we need to stay.
Mr. Gregory, in my understanding of parliamentary procedures, it's up to you if you wish to withdraw your motion. The second can be withdrawn. Even if those are withdrawn, there's no guarantees of where, how it moves. Let's all understand that piece. I will say this, I don't think he would mind me saying this. I reached out to Mr. Slee and said if there was an issue on the weekends where time schedules for yours wouldn't work out, could things be taken care of fed wise, water wise and cleaned? And he felt like that could be done for a bit of time if we were majorly having an issue. I think hours could be worked out in a way that we can make sure, and volunteers hopefully could take care of some of those pieces. That's my view on it. I will not say that that's my recommendation, but that's my view on it.
Volunteers are not consistent. We don't get consistent volunteers. What we do have is not always all the time. They might stay for a couple of days, a couple of hours. They're not consistent.
Have you asked since this discussion, are there any volunteers that would like to help?
Yes. About 3 have come forward and all of those are teenagers.
It is fresh still, though. It is fresh. At this point with no movement, we will leave this as budgeted. No withdrawal of our motion and no movement. I appreciate your willingness to come back. All right, is there anything else inside our budget that we would like to look back at?
Did you speak with Mr. Beatty about rescue?
I failed to do that. I think at this point, what we were discussing on that, what you're mentioning is the rescue, the per diem pay piece of conversation that was supposed to be here today. I really feel like we need to see that ran through committee before we make a movement here. It appears to me, honestly, it would be best to make that movement in December or January. Why? Because that would be 1 full year at the same amount. So I think we've got some time for that to run through the pieces, if I see that correctly at this point. It would be a little time to run through and maybe see if there's a desire. I still wonder if there's not a different pay scale for different type calls that might be per diem, not pay scale, but per diem for different type costs. Don't know if that's how much work that is. I'll be honest with you. I assume it's an Excel spreadsheet and it's pretty easy. I do Excel spreadsheets on a regular basis, so I assume. All right, something. Sound good, everyone? But I did fail to look back at that. All right, any discussion further? Any items you wish to look at? Something fell behind me. Any items you wish to look at? If not, I believe, as I've looked back through this, we are completely through it. I will try my best with Miss Amy's gonna run back through those ones set here on the COLA and without COLA cost. But as presented, we have gone through favorable at this point with everything as they are. We could discuss in the budget meeting in May and June prior to, that would be our movement there in May if we had to have a further discussion on this. I would not call another night. I would look at calling it, adding it to the agenda for the June Finance Committee meeting prior to sending it to the full committee. If there's, I'm sorry. At this point, we've made a motion with the entirety through this, so we've got favorable recommendations on every one of them. At this point, we do not have to have that piece is anything I can see. We would be fine with a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn and seconded. All those in favor, let it be known by stating aye. Aye, you are adjourned. Thank you for your attendance.